Today I will show you how to find the side length of a right triangle. If you already know two sides of the right triangle, then you use this Pythagorean theorem to find the third side, which is a square plus b square equals c square. Now, if you only know one side of a right triangle, then you use trig ratios, which are sine, cosine, and tan. So let's do some examples. Okay, so we have a right triangle here. The right angle is right here. Now the side that is opposite to our right angle and the longest side is always C. Okay, so let's call this side A and this side B. So the first thing we do is we write down what's given to us, what is known. So we know A is 9 and B is 3. Now let's write down what's unknown, what we need to find, which is C. Okay, so let's write down the formula. That is a square plus b square equals c square. At this point, we usually manipulate our formula if the variable that we're looking for is not already isolated. But we're looking for c, and c is already isolated. So we don't need to do any manipulation. So all we do is we plug in the numbers and calculate c. So 9 square plus 3 square equals c square. So we have 81 plus 9 equals c square. Now that is 90 equals c square. Okay, so we need to find c. But in the formula, we have c square. So the opposite of squaring is taking the square root. So let's take a square root of this. So what we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. So let's take a square root of the other side. So this square right here and this square root cancel each other out. So we're left with c equals 2, and the square root of 90 is 9.5. So the side length of hypotenuse is 9.5. Okay, so let's do another example. This is our right angle right here, and the side that is opposite to that right angle and that is the longest is always labeled as C. Okay, so let's call this A and let's call this side B. Okay, so let's write down what is given to us in the question. So A is equal to 10 centimeters and C is equals to 12 centimeters. Now we are looking for B. Okay, so let's write down our formula, which is a square plus b square equals c square. Now we need to solve for b. So we need to isolate b. So we're adding a square in this equation on this side. So we're going to subtract it. What we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. We're going to subtract a square from the other side as well. Now, plus a square minus a square, they cancel each other out. We are left with b square on this side equals to c square minus a square. Okay, so we have the variable isolated. Let's plug in the numbers and solve for b. Okay, so c square is 12 square minus 10 square. So we have 144 minus 100. Okay, so we have b squared equals 44. We need to find b. So what we're going to do is we're going to cancel this square, and we're going to do this by taking a square root. So what we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. The square root and the square cancel each other out. We are left with b equals to the square root of 44, which is 6.6. So side B is 6.6 centimeters long. So remember, whenever you're solving for the sides of a right triangle, and if you know two sides, you always use this formula right here, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so we have a right triangle given to us, and we need to determine the length of xy to the nearest tenth of a centimeter. Now, the first thing we do is we label our triangle. Okay, the longest side of a triangle is always your hypotenuse. And then we look at our angle, which is right here. So the side that is opposite to the angle given is your opposite side. And the side that is adjacent to your angle, or the only side that is left, is your adjacent. Okay, now we have our sides labeled. Now we need to determine what ratio we're going to use. So this first ratio here is SOH. So the S here stands for sine theta equals to, O stands for opposite side, so opposite, H stands for hypotenuse. So sine theta equals to opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, so the second ratio is CAH. So the C stands for cos theta equals to, A stands for adjacent, so adjacent over hypotenuse. H stands for hypotenuse. Now the last ratio is T stands for tan theta equals to, O stands for opposite over adjacent. A stands for adjacent. Now, these ratios are really important, and you need to memorize these. So all you need to do is memorize SOH CAH TOA. Okay, so we have the ratios written down. Now let's write down what's given to us. Okay, so the angle, or theta, is 61 degrees. Hypotenuse is 17.4 centimeters. Now let's write down what we need to find. So that is the length of x and y, which is the opposite side right here. Okay, so the opposite is something that we need to find. Okay, so let's figure out which ratio we're going to use. We have opposite and hypotenuse here. And when we look at the ratios, we have opposite and hypotenuse here. So we will be using sine. Okay, so now we're going to manipulate our ratio and isolate the variable that we're solving for, which is the opposite. So we're dividing opposite side by hypotenuse. We do the opposite, we multiply hypotenuse to cancel them. What we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. So let's multiply hypotenuse on the other side as well. This and this cancel each other out. We are left with opposite equals hypotenuse multiplied by sine of theta. Okay, so let's plug in the numbers and calculate. Okay, so when you're calculating sine of 61 in your calculator, you just press sine and write down 61. You're not going to use the second function for this question. We only use second function when we calculate angles. So sine of 61 is 0.8746. Okay, so let's go ahead and multiply these two numbers so we can get our final answer. That is 15.2 centimeters. So the length of the opposite side is 15.2 centimeters. Okay, so let's do another example. We need to find the length of FH. So the first thing we do is we label our triangle. So this is our right angle right here. And the side that is opposite to this, or the side that is the longest, is called your hypotenuse. Now we look at our angle, which is given to us right here, and the side that is opposite to the angle is called opposite. Now the third side, or the side that is left, is called adjacent. Okay, so let's write down the information that's given to us, what's known. So the angle, or theta, is 50 degrees, and hypotenuse is 5.0 centimeters. And we need to find side FH, or adjacent. Okay, so let's figure out which ratio we're going to be using. We have hypotenuse and adjacent here, and we have hypotenuse and adjacent here. So we will be using cos theta equals to adjacent over hypotenuse to find the length of adjacent side. Okay, so let's manipulate our ratio to isolate the variable that we're solving for. That is adjacent, A. We're dividing adjacent by hypotenuse, so we're going to multiply it to cancel it out. What we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. This and this cancel each other out. We are left with adjacent equals to hypotenuse multiplied by cos theta. Okay, so let's plug in the numbers. So when you calculate cos of 50 degrees, you just press cos and type 50. You're not going to use the second function. Okay, so let's do that. So cos of 50 is 0.6428. Okay, so let's go ahead and multiply these two numbers to get the final answer. So the final answer is 3.214, or 3.2 centimeters. Let's do another example. In this example, we have to find the length of GH. So this side right here. Now, let's label the triangle first. Now, this is our right angle, and the side that is opposite to this, and the longest side, is always called the hypotenuse. Now, our angle is given right here, 50 degrees. The side that is opposite to this is the opposite side. Now, the side that is left, the third side, is called the adjacent side. Okay, so let's write down what's given to us. So we know theta, or angle, is 50 degrees. We know adjacent side is 11.2 centimeters. And we need to find opposite side. So we have opposite and we have adjacent. So the ratio that has opposite and adjacent is 10. So we will use 10 to solve this question. So the ratio is tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. We need to isolate O. We're dividing O by A, so we're going to do the opposite. We're going to multiply it. So what we do to the one side, we do it to the other side. So this and this cancel each other out, and we are left with opposite equals to adjacent multiplied by 10 theta. Now let's plug in the numbers and calculate. Now when you calculate tan of 50 degrees, you just simply press 10 on your calculator, no need to use the second function, and press 50. And you will get 1.192. Now simply go ahead and multiply these two numbers. You will get 13.3 as your answer. So the side length is 13.3 centimeters. I will show you how to solve angles in right triangles. If you already know two angles, you're going to use the Angle Sum Theorem, which states that the sum of all the interior angles in a triangle equals to 180 degrees. If you only know one angle, which would be your 90 degrees, you're going to use the trig ratios. So let's quickly review the trig ratios. We have SOH CAH TOA. We have sine of theta equals to opposite over hypotenuse. We have cosine or cos of theta equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. The last one we have is tangent. So tan of theta equals to opposite over adjacent. Let's do our first example. Determine the measure of angle x. So we need to find angle x. And just by looking at it, we can tell that two of the angles are given. That means we're going to use the Angle Sum Theorem. Let's write down what is given to us first. We know angle y is 90 degrees. We know angle z is 61 degrees. And we need to find angle x. So let's write down what we need to find. Now let's write down our Angle Sum Theorem, which is that the sum of all angles is 180 degrees. So angle x plus angle y plus angle z is 180 degrees. Let's plug in the numbers and solve for angle x. So we don't know what angle x is, so let's copy that down. We know angle y is 90 degrees. We know angle z is 61 degrees equals 180 degrees. Let's combine like terms. We know 90 plus 61 is 151. Now we're going to subtract 151 from both sides. This and this cancel each other out. We are left with angle x equals to 180 degrees minus 151 degrees. The answer is 29 degrees. So angle x is 29 degrees. Okay, let's do another example. Determine the measure of angle D. Just by looking at this triangle, we can tell that we only have one angle that is given to us. That is right here, 90 degrees. So when we have only one angle given to us, we use trig ratios. So we're going to use SOH CAH TOA. So the first thing we will do is we will label our triangle. So the side that is opposite to the right angle is called the hypotenuse. The side that is opposite to the angle that we need to find is called the opposite side. And the remaining side is called adjacent. Let's write down what's given to us. We know adjacent is 9. We know opposite is 3. Let's write down what we need to find. We need to find angle D. Now we need to pick the ratio that has both adjacent and opposite, and that would be tan. So tan of theta equals to opposite over adjacent. Now theta here is angle D, so let's write down D. So tan of angle D is opposite is 3, over adjacent, which is 9. Now right here, I don't have tan times D, I have tan of D. And to cancel that, I have to take the inverse of D. And I do the same on the opposite side. So D will equal to tan inverse of 3/9. Now, this is where you're going to use the second function on your calculator. And you need to make sure your calculator is in the degree modes, not in the radians. So you're going to press the second function key, and then you're going to press the tan key, and then you will enter 3/9. So angle D equals to 18.4 degrees. Okay, now we know angle D. Now we can find angle F as well. So let's do that. Now we need to determine the measure of angle F. We already know that angle D is 18.4 degrees. And we know that angle E is 90 degrees. Now, if we already know two angles, we can find the third angle by using the Angle Sum Theorem, which means the sum of all angles inside a triangle equals to 180 degrees. This means angle D plus angle E plus angle F equals to 180 degrees. Now let's plug in our numbers. We know angle D is 18.4 degrees. We know angle E is 90 degrees. And we need to find angle F. Let's combine our like terms. 18.4 plus 90 degrees is 108.4 degrees. Now we will subtract 108.4 degrees from both sides. This and this cancel each other out, and we are left with angle F equals to 180 degrees minus 108.4 degrees. Angle F equals to 71.6 degrees. Let's do another example. Determine the measure of angle F. Just by looking at this triangle, we can tell that we only have one angle given. That is the right angle. The side that is opposite to the right angle is called the hypotenuse. The side that is opposite to the angle that we need to find is called the opposite side. The remaining side is called the adjacent side. Let's write down what's given to us. We know angle E is 90 degrees. We know hypotenuse is 12. We know adjacent is 6. And we need to find angle F. We need to pick the ratio that has both adjacent and hypotenuse. And that would be cos. So cos of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. So theta is angle F, so let's plug that in. So cos of angle F is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 6, hypotenuse is 12. Now this is not cos times F. This is cos of F. Now to cancel this, we're going to take the inverse of cos. And we do that on both sides. F equals to cos inverse of 6/12. Now this is where you're going to use the second function key on your calculator, and you need to make sure your calculator is in the degrees mode. So press second function, press cos, and then enter 6/12. Your answer is 60 degrees. Angle F is 60 degrees. Now we already know angle E and angle F. Let's find angle D. Since we already know two angles of this triangle, we're going to use the Angle Sum Theorem to solve for angle D. So let's write down what's given to us first. We know angle E is 90 degrees. We know angle F is 60 degrees. And we need to solve for angle D. Angle Sum Theorem states that the sum of all interior angles in a triangle equals to 180 degrees. So angle D plus angle E plus angle F equals to 180 degrees. Let's plug in our numbers. Angle E is 90 degrees and angle F is 60 degrees. Let's combine like terms. 90 degrees plus 60 degrees is 150 degrees. Subtract 150 degrees from both sides. And we're left with angle D equals to 180 degrees minus 150 degrees. Angle D is 30 degrees. Remember, there are two ways to solve angles in a right triangle. If you know two angles, you're going to use the angle sum theorem. If you only know one angle, then you will use SOH CAH TOA. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my future tutorials.